The following episode was originally recorded for a private podcast as part of the Equipped for Life course. It has been edited for public release, but may reference training material from the Equipped for Life course. So last time we talked about Achilles heels, problems that we're noticing that we have in our dialogues. And I thought that that was going to be fast. And then it wasn't fast. It was this never happens with us where we take a long time to talk about a thing. Yes, definitely not a, because this is the Achilles heel at ERI. This is the planning fallacy. We always think something's going to take shorter than it actually does. So anyway, last time, just to recap, we talked about how I let people interrupt me a lot and I don't get things back on track. I just kind of let it happen and probably have other areas where I'm just not assertive enough. Jacob talked about how he has this issue, especially with his friends, where he's still got this inner monologue going on. He's not listening really well. He's listening to refute, but not to understand them. And so he's got that. And then Rachel, you came with two. You came, so you talked about one where you're like expecting more from people than you ought to in certain circumstances, which is definitely interesting. But you said that you had another one. And so I'm interested in, what is your other Achilles heel?
So this one's also me cheating a little bit because I struggled with it.
You're just too awesome. That's such a weakness. It's fine. She just brings two halves and that makes a whole. It's fine.
Well, I think that this one's going to be more helpful than maybe my current one because I actually have more of a solution to it. Okay. And it's also something I struggled with in the beginning of my pro-life work more. It's just like a way I've grown. And so for those who aren't at a more advanced level or something, maybe also are struggling with this. I think this is more common than some of the nitpicky stuff that I'm like fighting with myself. Yep. So we're going to be in kind of the next installment of the course where we're releasing additional practical dialogue tip videos. I'm going to have a video that's very similar to what I'm going to talk about right now. So be looking for that. That's going to be fun.
So this is like a teaser
this is almost extended probably. I'm going to be able to talk about it more. But one of my strengths at Outreach, I love building rapport. I love making jokes. I love finding common ground. I'm really good at smiling and making it. Well, you see me dialogue probably. I don't know. You've heard us talk about it. So I'm really good at that. It always feels like my conversations, that's not where they're struggling. It's never really that tense. I mean, there's exceptions. Right. But my average conversation is very chill.
You've got a thing like Jacob where it's hard not to like you, which is like a huge advantage at Outreach. Yeah, that's true.
What are you saying, Josh?
No, I mean,
I'm just saying, especially at Outreach.
I think it's I make it with the friendliness in just my daily life. I don't really try that hard to be friendly, but at Outreach, I really put effort there because it's so important to be friendly there. Yeah. So if someone meets me at Outreach, they're like, "You're one of the friendliest people." I'm like, "No, I'm not." But anyway, I'm great at building up that rapport. What I wasn't great at was like pushing people into the cognitive dissonance, uncomfortable situation as hard as I can. And so this is not the same thing as Don't Be Too Nice, but it's similar where I don't want them to have to struggle with their view and just like wrestle with it right there too much. Like sometimes it makes me feel a little uncomfortable to push them hard. I don't make as powerful statements as I can get away with or whatnot. And so when you make a powerful statement, when you push them to be struggling with something, what Tim calls this caching and rapport. Yeah. So rapport is almost like a currency in the conversation, right? Think about it like I was kind of getting all these tickets at an arcade, but then I would like hoard them and not cash them in for the prize. Right. The prize is pushing them and helping them to wrestle with their view.
And the tickets are worthless anywhere else.
Right. Like you don't want to leave the arcade with tickets and just have tickets at home. Like they're not going to help you at Walmart, right? Like you got to cash them all in before you leave. And you're never, especially in the Outreach situation. Relational apologetics is a whole nother ballpark.
Yes. Because you're going to use those tickets later. You're going back
to
the
arcade. Yeah. Where if you're at the Outreach table, you might not ever talk to this person again. You got to give it all. And so I would hold back. And what would happen would be like, think about it like music. It's building up, it's building up, it's building up. And I would have no like powerful, like climax in the overture. It wouldn't happen. And so sometimes like the momentum would just kind of drop where I should have been pushing and making powerful statements. And so it was like, I kept leading them and then they were like, where are we supposed to go with this? And the end of the conversation would, it was so great to talk to you. Oh yeah, great. But I felt like sometimes we'd walk away, but why did we have that conversation? It wasn't as clear as it needed to be.
Yeah.
And now now that I'm thinking about this in a more intentional way, and I'm cashing in all my rapport, I'm able to give them a very clear direction. After we're done talking, what's the next step for you? I'm able to give that in a very gracious and well-explained way. So, it's like today we talked about a lot of really interesting things, and I'm glad we were able to explore bodily rights thoroughly. I mean, we've been talking for 25 minutes. This has been great. I know you have to go to class, but before you go, I just want to tell you it was really great to talk with you. And I hope that you go and you look up that blog post I talked about on our website. Here's my card. Go there, read about it. Keep talking about it with your friends. I mean, there's this pro-life group on your campus. If you have any questions, you could ask them. Like, whatever it is, that push at the end of the conversation, I make sure to be strong with it. And this is one of the strengths I think that Tim has in conversations. When I watch him, he knows how far to push people without going too far. You go too far, it can be a disaster. And I think some pro-life people are the opposite of me. They want to push too soon without the rapport.
Yeah.
Right? You need to care about this issue, and you need to care about it now.
Yeah. 30 seconds in, not good.
But 30 minutes in, after we've been joking around and they really like me, and I say, okay, you need to think about this issue.
Yeah.
If I'm right, da-da-da-da-da.
You've built the trust.
You've built the trust. It's so powerful. And I think I'm a lot more helpful to people now that I push hard. Kind of knowing how to do that, I think takes some playing around, some experience. But I don't know. I felt like that was definitely a weakness for me for quite a long time. This is more of a recent thing. I would say the last 6 to 8 months, I've been thinking about this intentionally.
That's great. I remember talking about this with you. I think it was at the Students for Life conference, not the last one, but like a year ago or a year and a half ago.
Like that.
And at our last outreach, I remember talking about this again, and you were in a much better place. You were pushing people a lot, and I think that particular outreach, I was pushing people in especially extreme ways. So I think that the general topic was very, very much in my mind. It's kind of a fun opportunity to see, it's not just here's a weakness, but also you've grown a lot in this area in the last year or so. It's really cool. For more on that, I wrote a blog post. Go read it.
What's the name of the blog post that has caching
report? It's Don't Dialogue Like Hamilton or Aaron Burr.
Okay.
It's the caching report piece.
Okay.
All right. Last but not least, I guess we don't really know.
It's true. We are talking about weaknesses. In terms of issues that are really recurring things that cause me problems on campus these days, the biggest one in my mind is I don't like starting conversations. It's a problem. And so some of this is I'm introverted, and some of this also is I've got this weird mix of I've got some conversations that have been amazing and wonderful experiences, and some that are just terrible. And you just don't know. I mean, you're
rolling the dice.
I'm struggling with my metaphors here. It's really a roll of the dice, and you don't know what's going to come up. And I think that gets to me sometimes. And that interacts with my really serious introversion, and getting the conversation started takes a lot of emotional resources for me. Once I'm in the conversation, the next hour is it takes no emotional resources. I'm having a good time. Yeah. But getting it started sucks. And this is actually part of where my vampire principle comes from, which is you don't take over someone's conversation. You only enter it if they invite you in. Is I really respect how hard it is to start a conversation. So if someone else starts it,
don't you dare take it over.
It's not your conversation. Yeah, they did the hard part. They got it going. But if they want help, then it's fine. And it also means I've had various experiences, especially at JFA, where people knew that this was the way that I operated, but would also, if they had a philosopher on campus that they weren't sure what to do with, they would bring me in. And that is just the biggest win-win ever because they're getting help on someone that wants to talk about Kant or whatever, and I can do that. And also it's a win for me because I didn't have to start the conversation. They just handed me this great conversation. There's already some rapport usually, and I don't have to start it. So this results in me, this weakness results in me just burning more time at outreach, not in conversation, than I would like. It's a tough one to overcome. I really don't like getting the conversation started.
I'm so glad that you brought this up on the podcast. So I was trying to guess what everyone was going to say. And you guys have all, with the exception of Josh, You guys have all said things that I kind of anticipated what yours was going to be, but Jacob and Tim have surprised me with what they shared. So I knew that this was something that you disliked. I didn't know it was such a...
It's an emotional hardship every outreach.
Yeah. I mean, I knew you didn't like it. I thought I was like, he's an introvert. It's fine, whatever. But this is...
Turns out it's not fine.
No, it's not fine.
I'm
it's
not okay.
hard. It's hard.
But so I know so many students struggle with this, though. That's why I'm so excited that you brought it up. So what do we do about this? Do we send... Is it the best strategy to send out the extroverts and have them catch the fish and then hand you the fishing rod and just pass it to you? Like, should we be doing this with our Students for Life clubs or whatnot? Or should we be helping and giving tools to introverts? I mean, it's more than just the introversion, but like to people who hate starting conversations, should we be giving them more tools to make starting the conversation easier, even more than just having the pool table there?
But I think it's totally both and.
Okay.
I think it's a good like body of Christ. This is unusually Christian episode. That's fine. Body of Christ kind of metaphor. Like some people are hands and feet and that kind of thing. Like I'm much better in a conversation and I'm not great at starting them. If someone a given person is like struggles in them but is really natural at starting them, like that's just a natural pairing. So to some degree, like if you can find out that kind of thing, that's great. But also to some degree, we introverts out there, like we need to get up off our butts and do the hard thing because people need our help and they need to talk to us. And it's like selfish on our parts to not be willing to risk that discomfort. So it's definitely both and. There was a couple of practical things that I've done to try to overcome this to some extent. So one of those is like just really basic drilling. So I had this when I was at JFA, we had this intern named Holly Fugate, who I became really good friends with, or at the time she wasn't Fugate, that's her name now. And Holly, like me, was very, very introverted. And her problem was getting conversations started. Once she was in them, she was phenomenal. And so at one point we were at Outreach and I was noticing like people are just kind of walking by and she's not flagging them down, trying to get anything started. I said, all right, we're going to drill. And so now I'm a student. I just walk by. It's like, it's like nothing comes out. And so we just like spend some like just drilling. Let's just get it started. And a big thing that helps is like having your opening line ready. You know what your first sentence is going to be. You've got it memorized. You don't have to worry about it. If you're improvising like, hey, nice shoes, it's like random stuff
That's
happens.
not the opening line, by the way.
That's
Creepy.
not good. So have your opening line memorized. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this display? Or hey, do you have a minute? Or whatever your opening line is going to be, have that ready. Don't be trying to improvise that. That's going to make it even harder to get things going.
That's great advice for the introvert person who struggles. I'm going to tell the extroverts what to do. Because I'm the extrovert. So this is a 3-step process to catch a fish and pass. So the first thing you do, obviously, is
catch a fish.
Catch the fish, and you're passing the fishing rod, right? So the first thing you do is you start the conversation, but it needs to be in the stage. You need to get to the stage of they've already written something down on the notepad or stuck the sticker on there or whatever, and now you're in the conversation, and preferably you've gotten a little bit away from the table, and you're starting the conversation. You know the introverts like nearby, in a place where you can flag them down, and you wait for the person to say something that's a good transition, like you've maybe trotted out a toddler and now you're on to bodily rights. My friend Tim loves talking about bodily rights arguments. Hey, Tim, you want to come over here real quick? You pull Tim in, and you're like, Holly here, she is talking about how bodily rights are really important in the abortion conversation. Can you speak into that a little bit? I know you love talking about them, and you don't have to lie. You don't have to say anything like, I don't understand them that well, or I don't like talking about. You don't have to say anything like that. It's like, you love talking about this. Can you speak into that a little bit, or do you have a question for her?
Okay, can I offer like a tweak to that?
Sure,
like I love
totally.
that so much, but I think instead of Tim loves to talk about that
feels awkward to me.
It's more like Tim's thought about this a lot, or he's been reading the pro-choice articles on this a lot. Like there's some
that's much better.
You got to give them a reason. Yeah,
that's a great tweak. I love that.
I don't know. That was great.
So you're giving them a reason for pulling him in, and then you give it a second. So now it's a 3-way conversation. But what we don't want to have happen with this strategy is now you're like having to kind of double up in every conversation because I'm helping start conversations for Tim and now I'm stuck in it. So you wait a little bit and you give it a beat, and then you just excuse yourself. You don't have to, I have a phone call, or like, blah, blah, blah.
Fake
No.
phone
You
call.
can do that though.
You could, but
We could like all actually. So we could go. Here's the plan. Rachel's now
is
going
not
to
the
do
plan.
this role. This is how you could do it. And Jacob, if he's on a conversation, he knows. Okay, he just saw the pass happen. Wait 60 seconds. Call Rachel's cell phone.
No, what I would do is it's so easy. Just say, "Excuse me," and you walk away. And that's okay, because that way you're not lying. Oh, I have a phone call I have to take. It's the kids over there.
You do the Louis C.K. thing when they're all in the circle and everyone's like everyone's in a circle and he's just maybe this is a story I shouldn't be telling on the podcast, but it's this really funny Louis C.K. thing where he's stuck in the circle of young people and they're all smoking pot together and it's like really, really strong marijuana, and now he's way affected by it because he didn't realize how strong marijuana is now. And he's like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this conversation? Because like it's just like frozen. Because like, what do I say to get out of this? It's like, goodbye. Those are just sounds. So what is that? That's a nightmare. It's like, and then pretty soon he said like literally he knows what he did. He's like, I'm leaving now. And everyone's like, oh my gosh. It's like, so it's kind of like that.
Yeah,
Just
don't do that.
Just don't do that.
Just be like, excuse me for a second, and you just walk away and you get into another conversation and you catch another fish. It's fine.
So I like
awesome.
that approach a lot more than a thing that I've tried a couple of times. So our friend Gabby, we were at JFA, this is a number of years ago. And at that time, Steve and I were particularly frustrated with the problem of how hard it is to get people to stop. And so we were talking about different kinds of outreach tool ideas, and like we're willing to try anything to get someone, just to get them to stop. Once we get the conversation, it's good.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah,
okay.
we do.
Well, there's a couple directions. So one of the things that we legitimately we thought about, we never did. I promise we never did it. But what we thought about was setting up 2 blenders on a table. One of them has a fish in it and is not plugged in. One of them that has nothing in it and is plugged in, and just turn on a blender as someone's walking by, and just to startle them, and then ask them like, would it bother you more if they blended the fish than like a portion? We never tried it. Not a good idea. But the point is to illustrate
for Don't Be Weird.
just how like desperately we were trying to figure out what could get people to stop. And so one thing that I tried one day was I imitated the pilot to How I Met Your Mother. If you've seen this TV show, is
What
this
you're talking about?
Have you just seen How I Met Your Mother?
I've seen like certain episodes that people have shown me, but I've never seen the whole thing.
Okay, so there's this thing that they do in the pilot where it's this wingman game where they play Have You Met Ted? And Ted's like, no, I don't want to play Have You Met Ted? And then Barney just like, they're in a bar, he just like grabs a woman and says, hey, have you met Ted? And then walks away. And so at one point, Gabby and I were just like frustrated when we couldn't get any conversation started. It's like, all right, let's play Have You Met Gabby? And I started like enthusiastically trying to flag people. I was like, hey, have you met Gabby? And actually some people were like, no, I haven't met Gabby. And just like introduce them and then walk away. And it actually like worked okay. But your approach is way less awkward and weird than that.
Okay. Yeah, I think while effective, a little weird.
A little weird. Certainly a little weird. But again, I mean, that was at a time where we were just desperate to try to figure out anything to get people to stop.
I just want pro-life people to know it is okay to just pass the buck like that.
Yeah.
And you can do it, and you can pull it off by, excuse me, and you just kind of like leave, and it's fine. They're distracted by all the cool things happening in the conversation.
It feels a little awkward,
yeah,
but it's a lot less awkward than it actually feels. It's not that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So my other like practical thing that I've done to try to overcome this, first one is like drill, know what your opening line is. The other thing, and this is a little embarrassing, and so just like, vulnerable moment for Tim on the podcast, there is a specific song that I will listen to sometimes before outreach to psych me up a little bit.
No, this works. This is a good song. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because we've listened to it together on the way down. We're like, Josh, can we play the song?
What song is it?
It's Awake and Alive by Skillet.
I don't know that song.
I don't like Skillet in general. I don't like that style of music in general. But for some reason, this song like psychs me up and like, all right, let's go do outreach. Let's go talk to people. And so like, I think basically before every outreach, I will one time in the morning leading up to it, I'll play this song and kind of try to psych myself up, and that'll get me in a better mental place. It's very embarrassing.
This is the kind of thing that like, I don't think this is embarrassing at all.
It feels embarrassing to me.
It shouldn't. We one time, 3 or 4 of us were in a car and loudly playing this on our way to the campus. So it's like this is a thing that an experience that you guys can have together and just kind of psych yourselves up.
There's a certain kind of connotation of like you stand in front of a mirror and you're like, I'm powerful. that kind of thing.
Here's the thing, though. Okay, you and I disagree on this. And that's probably why we disagree about this other thing. So Michael Hyatt is a guy that I have followed a lot and based a lot of the way that we blog on Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt deserves a certain amount of credit for how much ERI has gotten done, or like how professional we look, or something like that. Is a lot. He's not the only one I'm stealing ideas from, but he's certainly one of the main ones that I've been stealing ideas, especially in the first couple of years of ERI. And so Michael Hyatt, one of the things he does is public speaking, and he's talked, as part of his, platform university and these different things. So for the people that are building platforms, is he has a little routine that he does before public speeches. And Tim thinks this is just like completely crazy. He's just not going to do this. But for Michael Hyatt,
that's a way overstatement. Finish.
All right.
Finish. But that's totally not a fair representation.
All right. So Michael Hyatt, well, he's got, I think he might have music that he sometimes plays, but also he will give himself a little pep talk. That's something along the lines of, you have some great things to share today. These people are lucky to hear from you today. You've got this. You're going to be awesome. Like that kind of little pep talk. And he also has, this is really cute, he's got this little audio file on his phone that's just a recording of his wife giving him a pep talk. It's I love you. You are awesome. You're going to go. You've got this thing. Like, I can't wait for you to get it. Like, I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell anyone what's on this actual file, but it is some kind of a pep talk from his wife. He plays it and then he goes on stage. I've done this a little bit. I don't have a file from my wife, but I do sometimes give myself a little pep talk, just because I think that our content is really, really valuable, can be really, really helpful. I'm really proud of the things that we say. And just sometimes it just like helps me get into, especially as an introvert, like I want to not be super introverted on stage. So this helps me a little bit. Tim's coming from a different place.
Not as much as you think. So it's not that I think that that's like objectively stupid. I think it makes sense. Like something like music, especially, is an easy example.
Right.
Music has such a powerful influence on our emotions. Like it's like a chemical weapon. Like it is so powerful in the way that it affects our emotions. And so the fact that it does a thing of like I'm in a like more introverted emotional place and help like get me to a more extroverted place, that makes sense to me. The problem is like there's a particular kind of picture of these kinds of things like as portrayed in like film that's like really dorky. Like, you're so cool, man. You're just the coolest ever. Like just like weird was I can't think of one in particular. But I've seen this done in films a couple of times, and it's like really weird.
It's always the guy
before a date,
yes,
right?
He's like before the date or before he asks the girl out. Like he has to like pump himself up. I know the kind of the trope you're talking about. And it just makes the person doing it look dumb.
It makes them look
yeah.
dumb. So it's like that's why I say it's embarrassing. Like it feels a little bit weird, but like I don't think there's anything actually wrong with it.
Okay, so like no one should be allowed to watch this happen. There's cameras there. That's why it looks dumb, is you're getting to be the invisible watcher of a person doing something that only should be done alone.
That's fair. But it's we don't actually disagree as much as I think you think we do. But that's the other practical thing that I've done is it's Skillet Awaken Alive. I'll just like pull it up on YouTube, my phone or something, and it helps.
We need Jacob to speak in to this.
Yeah, I'm just interested because Jacob is also a lot more extroverted than Tim and I. So I'm interested. Like, Rachel has said some really good things to say. I'm interested in Jacob, especially for the introverts who listen to this podcast. What advice would you give them during outreach to get into conversations?
Well, Tim is pretty easy for me to help out because he's like really weird and doesn't drink coffee, and that would be the first thing I'd tell him to do, which he still doesn't do. Is just
I
get
drink
yourself
coffee
a nice
sometimes. Cup. I don't drink coffee every day because I don't want to be dependent on coffee. I like coffee.
I think that's sinful, Tim. You should drink coffee every day.
He also doesn't listen to Skillet every day.
Argument on the other side of that.
Anyway,
there's certain things that Tim does on outreach days that he doesn't have to do every day.
I just tried to bring it back in. Focus in. All right.
Do you have actual advice from Jacob
or anybody?
Yeah. I will say that even I consider myself a pretty high up there on the extrovert scale. I remember just real quick. I remember when my wife and I like first got married and we were settling in, and I was like, hey, honey, so-and-so is going to have a little get together at their house. We should go. And my wife was like, but we don't know anyone there except for them. And I was like, yeah, think of all the new friends we can
make. Yeah, that's just you, man.
But even saying that we're starting a conversation with a random stranger about abortion, that's a really high level of anxiety and difficulty on the bar. Like that's way up there. And so the first 10 seconds is going to be awkward. Almost all the conversations I get into, it seems like the first 10 seconds are weird. They just feel, at least they feel weird to me. Very few times has that not been the case. And so I encourage everyone, not just the introverts, but extroverts, can you just acknowledge 10 seconds are going to be hard, and then you're going to have a great conversation after that. And so I think that helps people. That helps me because I have to tell myself that all the time. The other thing for helping introverts, the way us extroverts can do it, is when we are starting a conversation, if you just have your introvert friend next to you, and this is where introverts, you can't be like wandering off when you're like, hey, I'm going to try to help get a conversation going here. And so you start and you say, hey, thanks for filling out our poll today. We really appreciate it. I'd love to hear more about why you wrote down what you wrote down. My name's Jacob. This is my friend, Tim. What's your name? So then you start, and now Tim's already, like, it's important that I introduced, because I started the conversation, and right off the bat, I introduced Tim into the conversation. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, now it's clear that it's the three of us having this conversation. And I will have talked to like Tim, and I don't actually do this with Tim. I'm just using him for the example. But I will have talked to Tim earlier and said, look, I want you to take over this conversation and you to drive it. I'm just going to make the introduction, basically. And as soon as Tim has that, I'm going to find somebody else that's standing alone, one of our other volunteers, and be like, hey, guys, I might not even say I'm leaving. I might just kind of mosey on over there to the other person while they're in the middle of their good conversation, and I might even come back into it and go back out again. I found that to be an effective way to get people in conversations as an extrovert. I will say that when you're trying to get people, like in the mornings, it's really slow. And this is a little bit of a meta point here, is when you're trying to get people in a conversation, mornings are difficult. As the day goes on, it's going to get easier. Before 10 a.m. is just tough. But I think I did this with Josh. We were at, what university were we at? Was it
Winthrop?
Yeah. Wow. You don't even know where I'm going, and you know what university.
Well, there's only so many outreaches I've done with you, Jacob.
We were at Winthrop, and I said, watch this. These people won't sign the table when I ask them. And I said, they were walking over, and I said, hey, would you guys sign our poll? And they were like, no, thanks. We're going to keep going. And then I said, all right, Josh, watch this. These people will sign. And I said,
Jedi.
He's got superpowers too. We just talked about Rachel's superpowers. Jacob has superpowers.
But wait, listen, here's the difference. I said, hey guys, would you help us out by signing that poll? It'll take you just a second.
It's not a figuring people out thing. How do you make the pitch?
The pitch of, will you help us out? And just sign our poll. No pressure. Any way you want to sign it. We just really appreciate your input. The saying no pressure takes the pressure off, and saying we just really want your input. Well, everybody loves giving their input.
Well, people like to help too.
Yeah.
In the beginning, yes.
I feel like such a novice right now.
Why? What do you mean?
I don't do this. This is not how I like try to get people to sign. I'm the like they're not going to do it this time. Like Jacob's just like watching me from behind. Like they're not going to sign. They're not going to sign because of the way that I'm asking. I don't do it this way.
Huh.
I'm dumb.
This is really helpful, Jacob. In spite of the fact that I feel like I'm listening to the living embodiment of the Twitter logo.
I know I'm never getting birds. Oh my gosh, that would make me crazy,
man. I just
really good stuff, Jacob.
Just one kind of final thought that I had, and this could go a long direction. We're just not going to do it. We're not going to take the opportunity for a big old discussion about this. I'm just going to point out the fact that having a very interesting looking or large kind of a display or something like that helps too.
This is one of the benefits of something like a JFA exhibit, that's, 12 or 18 feet tall. Regardless of what's on it, you can stop people even if there's not graphic abortion images on it. JFA has like this new art of life exhibit, so like really big pictures of art. It might not stop as many people as graphic pictures do, but still, like, just the fact that there's something that big and it's just like different stops a lot of people. And as an introvert who has a really hard time doing hey, would you like to, like that thing that Jacob just like is easy for him, like it's hard for me. It's super easy for me to just walk up to someone and just stand next to them and they're staring at a thing and just say, "What do you think about this?" Like, that's easy for me.
It's an easier
so
move.
Now I know some people listening are not super into doing outreaches with graphic abortion images, and we're not going to get into that right now. I think you should at least try it, but I know that might be a thing for you. But if that's the case, it might be at least a reason to motivate you to, is there something else interesting that you can do that would have some stopping power?
Yeah.
Is there something, whether it's something that's bigger than a poll table or just more interesting looking? Like, we're working on kind of a new outreach tool idea that weirdly Tim had, and then someone else on the course Facebook forum also had at this, almost the same idea simultaneously. Like, we're working on that, and that might end up being like more interesting looking than a poll table. So it might end up having more stopping power, or maybe something really colorful. Like, I don't know what it is, but just thinking strategically about what you set up, certain kinds of displays or exhibits or signs or whatever will stop more people than others, and that makes it easier to get into conversations with them.
It's true.
I think it's a good point, Josh.
So I feel like this has been a great discussion because each one of us had a very different weakness.
Yeah, that worked out kind of
which was
nicely.
cool. Yeah, and I'm glad we got to at least talk about how to, if you have that weakness, to kind of improve on it. But hopefully this podcast is helpful for you listening to realize that even people who've done this a lot more than you have, and we're creating this content and whatnot, we still have things that we're improving and growing into. This isn't like an impossible bar that we're like, looking down upon the people. Like, we're just, we're all growing together.
Yeah, there's this idea where sometimes, like, when you blog, you're actually supposed to pick, are you one of these three things? Are you just like everybody? Or are you like,
Hashtag
are you like a
relatable.
guru that's just like on the top of the mountain, just looking down on everything, you're the expert? Or are you this other thing that's in between that I feel that I have really wanted us to be? It's more like we've been up the mountain and then we've come back down, and it's like, let's help each other. Let's all go up. I've got some experience that's going to help you, but I can also learn from you, and it's not total gurus. But I would just also say, I'm interested, like, you've heard our Achilles heels. What's your Achilles heel? We're getting emails of people giving their really bizarre pro-choice arguments that they've heard that we can talk about on future podcasts, and wow, that's been pretty interesting so far. So I want to keep getting those emails. But also, I'm interested, especially if you've been through our course. You do outreach similar to us. We've gone and done outreach now with clubs that have taken our course, and they're replicating what we do pretty well a lot of times. What are your weak spots? What are your Achilles heels? I want to hear about them. I want us to be able to talk about them and how to avoid them, because it's not just you. There's a lot of, like, I can identify with a lot of the Achilles heels that I've heard today. It might not be like the one that I have the most often, but I've dealt with all of these things before. And so I think it's just helpful to be able to hear from people, not just what's working, what's not working well. Because I know there's conversations that we have in private, but it's like, I think this could be really helpful to have in public. So I want to hear, you should email us your Achilles heel moments. And if you don't know what your Achilles,
nice.
Yeah, we'll definitely be nice. And if you don't know what your Achilles heel is, then that's a problem. You need to be doing more outreach and thinking a lot more about like what's going on, because you've got Achilles heels. Find out what those are, maybe work with the rest of your club members and ask them. Like, this would make for an interesting club meeting. All right, let's figure out what our problems are. And I don't know what my problem is. I think I'm awesome. So, like, everyone tell me. And I bet everyone will be like, oh, here's the thing. I'll tell you what your thing is. and then I want to hear from you.
Hey, if I could add, I'd love to hear if you've got an Achilles heel, but somehow you've gotten over it and you found some remedy for it that we haven't talked about today, or one that we have talked about. I'd still love to hear about those too.